The normal format of the meeting, for those that are new to us, I'm going to shut up in a few moments and introduce you to our panel of experts. They are going to run through questions that have been submitted over the last 2 weeks. And after about 40 minutes or so, going to have a little interlude, and you're going to meet Claire Thorpe. Give us a wave if you're there, Claire, and can hear. Claire, audiologist at Royal Preston, and it was Claire's survey that nearly 100 of you responded to in the last couple of months. Claire's just going to talk us through some of the results from that survey. And then we've got Suzanne Barry. Suzanne, give us a wave. Are you there, Suzanne? Suzanne's a recently joined member, and she's going to talk about how she'd love to get participation from some of you as she looks to make a documentary on balance disorders. So we'll hear from Claire and Suzanne in the interlude. So I think the time has come for me to introduce to you the panelists, and I'm just adding them into my view. So we've got everybody there, and Andrew, let me just add you in. There we go. So hello to the panel and to all the audience there. Please appreciate these guys are giving up their own time so generously and their knowledge. So I'm really grateful. I'm sure everyone else will be by the end of this meeting, the information that they've given us. I'm going to ask each panelist just to introduce themselves for 30 seconds. For those who don't know, most people I think will know Professor Rea, but I'm still going to ask Professor Rea to introduce himself, please.
I'm Peter Rea. It's nice to see you all. I've just flicked through all the patients' photos, in fact, of you watching. So I see a lot of you I recognise. So happy Christmas to all of you. I'm an ENT surgeon in Leicester, special interest in balance, and we have about 7,000 or so appointments a year just in the NHS balance clinic alone here. And we have patients from all over the world coming over. So it's a really busy practice. We've got lots of exciting research going on, and we seem to do pretty well. So hopefully we've got some interesting questions, and I'll look forward to answering them, however challenging they are today. So look forward to seeing you all this afternoon.
Thank you, Peter. And Michaela, please.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I do the diagnostic testing at London Road Clinic with Peter, and I run a vestibular rehab service as well on a private basis, both at London Road Clinic and at Ashby. I've been a vestibular audiologist for, I think, just under 27 years now. So I started obviously when I was 3, and it's good to be here again.
That's normally my line, Michaela, but yes, it's fabulous having you here. Thanks. And Pippa, please.
Hi, I'm Pippa Braund. I'm an audiologist and coach. So I work part-time in the NHS in the Wirral, and also privately through audiology coaching, and I do contract work for the Steady Coach. And I actually had chronic dizziness from vestibular migraine for 9 years myself, but I've fully recovered from that now.
Brilliant. That's lovely. And last but not least, Professor Hugill.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Andrew Hugill. Yes, I'm a retired professor now, having retired last year. My background's in music, professor of music. I'm a composer and musician, but also I've done a lot of work in computing and creative computing. I was diagnosed with Meniere's in 2007 and have I suppose, a classic case of it, bilateral with severe hearing loss, vertigo, all the usual tinnitus, etc., etc. The vertigo, I'm pleased to say, has largely stopped now, but everything else is still very active. So I think that's probably enough to say about me.
I would add one more thing, Andrew, that Andrew, working with Professor Rea, created the one and only, it's still quite unique, the balance disorder spectrum, which I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. And I still find to this day it's such a useful resource for so many people to go to one interactive website where you can see every possible route in to some form of balance problem. So thank you, both of you, for creating that. And this, by the way, why Professor Hugill is on. Andrew's been a founding member of the group and a great supporter, and has many, many interesting viewpoints, approaches, angles to how we get to better lives. So this is why Andrew is with us today and will be commenting as we go along with the questions. So we know who the panel is. Claire, if you're going to read some of the questions with me, but I'm just going to start with a few general Christmas questions before I hand over to Claire. And the first one and this is for everyone on the panel. Given that Christmas and New Year celebrations often revolve around noisy, busy, social drinking, eating occasions, what is the panel's general advice to survive these particularly nightmare challenges when you've got a distressed balance system and an anxious mind? If I could start the ball rolling with Pippa, please, on that one.
Hi. So first off, in preparation for all of these, I would say process any emotions that you've got about the events that are not related to symptoms. And that might sound strange because it feels like it's all about the symptoms. But if we put it all on the symptoms, then we're reinforcing to the brain that these symptoms are really important and these symptoms are really dangerous. So instead, I mean, you can do it through journaling or just feeling it or verbally or whatever, but processing emotions like any social fears, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, people thinking things about you that aren't true, any anger that it's thing after thing after thing all at once instead of being split up through the year, any sadness about how hard it is, and then put it into perspective, and then the gratitude about being invited to these things and that kind of thing. Give yourself permission to say no to the ones that you don't want to go to, because we can go to these things, these other people, even if we don't want to go ourselves. So just be aware, do I actually want to go if I took symptoms out of the equation completely? You can do breathing exercises in the moment. You can feel the fear in your body and track that and give it some compassion, comfort it. Just kind of view it as an object in your body, like it might be a tension in your chest or something like that. And just be present with that. Send that some comfort and compassion whilst not getting overwhelmed by it. So give yourself a bit of distance, recognize that you're not the fear. You're the one who's witnessing it. Give yourself permission to take breaks if you need to, and give yourself permission to leave early. And also work out why you're there and why you're not there. You're there to see your friends. You're not there to be the life and soul of the party or prove anything to anybody.
Lovely. Thanks, Pippa. Professor Rea, any comments on parties?
I can't beat that. That's so beautifully said. I think the only thing I would add is that a slightly, maybe people would see it slightly more negative, but what you mustn't do is take to your armchair and take to your house. That's all I would ask is whatever you use to overcome your balance disorder, realize life is about living and get out of the house, get out of your armchair, keep moving. I'm not going to go into the details like Pippa's just done. She said it much more beautifully than I could.
Thank you. Thanks. Michaela?
Remembering to unmute myself there then. Things like thinking about where you position yourself can be really helpful. So if you're in a position where you're facing out to a vast room of flashing lights and lots of people, lots going on, that's going to be a lot more stimulating and overwhelming than if you're able to be in a slightly more confined space, or potentially with your back to the room, so you're just conversing to the person in front of you, so you haven't got quite so much stimulation right in front of you. Boundaries are fantastic things. Being able to say, this is what I want, this is what I feel able to do, and being able to say no when you feel that actually you've been in a position where, as Pippa says, you're doing things to people please rather than actually what's working for you. So it's perfectly okay to say, yes, I can come to this event, but I'll stay for as long as I can manage, and then I'm going to go, and it's okay to do that. So
Lovely.
boundaries and no are wonderful things.
Super. And Andrew, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I just treat it like an endurance sport rather than a party. So you have to build in breaks, as everybody's just said. Give yourself permission to leave, and just plan for energy levels, really. Or just be tracking your energy. You can sense when you're running out, and take breaks accordingly. And forget ideas of a traditional party where you just sail along seemingly forever.
Yeah, no, good. I take the old gambling advertisement slogan: when the fun stops, stop. If you're not enjoying it, don't do it. And one of the key things that I live by now, especially I'm getting older, if you really don't want to be doing something, don't do it. If you are unwell, which you are with a balance disorder, you don't need an excuse. You don't have to do these things. So only do what you want to do. We are going to have to really speed up, because I think the first question, we'll get through about a third of our questions in this meeting at this rate. So apologies, we'll be really fast. This one is kind of similar. Christmas, third year, unable to travel and visit relatives over the Christmas period. Other than saying I am unwell, would the panel members advise if I should explain a lot more about my balance illness? Sometimes I worry that my relatives and friends think I'm making this up as an excuse to avoid them. What is enough or too much information to give to others? So really quickly around the panel, start with Pippa again. What is too much or enough information to give to others?
I think that if you spend a long time going into how bad this is, sometimes you can leave the conversation feeling horrific, and I have done that so many times. But at the same time, you don't want people to think that, you're not going for no reason. So it really is getting a balance. I think you can plan like an elevator pitch. So just the main key points, the main key reasons why you can't go, and maybe include that you're working on recovery if you are, and what you're doing to make things change. And maybe you could see them on a video call or something like that if you can't get there in person, so that at least you're seeing them in some way.
Lovely. Michaela?
I think rather than potentially just saying, I'm not very well, and not elaborating more, I think it does help to be able to say, these are the things I find particularly difficult and make me feel even worse, but these are potentially the things that I can do instead, and would you be open to working with me to be able to find something that suits both of us? And if that doesn't work, sometimes, we don't have control over how other people respond. It's about trying to find a way to communicate to try and get the best outcome for both. And sometimes there comes a point where you have to just say, this is what I can do, this is what I can't, and that's the end of that.
Super. And Peter?
I think that's a really great question. Of course, it's not just family and friends, it's employers as well, who will often put up with you for 6 months or 8 months, and then there seems to be a cut-off then, and they just begin not to believe you. And I think the first thing is to empower yourself. this is a real thing. Know that it's very, very common and you're not alone. And a lot of people do suffer from this. I would agree with Michaela and Pippa that you don't want to over elaborate. You want to give a diagnosis, and you perhaps, rather than giving a very long spiel about all of the symptoms, which people may not appreciate you doing, you could just refer them, if they're genuinely interested, to some online information. There's a nice podcast. I think Kevin's put up the details on the chat room there, and it's with BBC World Service. And if you Google BBC World Service, crowd science and vertigo, we did a podcast a year, 18 months ago, and it was actually the most downloaded podcast in the world on BBC that week. And I think I did Pick of the Week with Salman Rushdie with it. And the reason I think it's useful is it's really nicely done by the broadcasters. They were very empathetic to the patients who are involved in this. And I think you just get a feel listening to it that actually there's a really horrid condition and it's hidden and not everyone else understands it. And by letting someone else explain how you're suffering, I think that's actually quite a nice thing to do as well.
Yeah, super. And Andrew? Oh, you're on mute, Andrew. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought I had a shortcut figured, but I didn't. So I'd just say as well, all of the above were absolutely great. But just say as well that you don't owe anybody proof, and if people don't understand, that's not because you failed to explain it adequately, it's because they don't get it, and it's their problem, not your problem.
Yeah. No, thank you. We did have a question from Angela about going abroad and meeting prospective French-speaking in-laws and the challenge of that. I think what you've been over with the previous two questions sort of suggests the approach there of she should only do what she's comfortable doing and not be apologetic if she can't talk too much. There was a final question in a similar vein, which I will mention because this does come up over the years. After many years of my dizzy life, all I want for Christmas is my partner to understand what I'm going through. And I'm not making up the symptoms and the many disruptions to our normal life. What are the best ways for me to help my partner give me the best gift I could ever have for this Christmas? Over to anyone in the panel, really, who'd like to offer a suggestion.
I'm happy to make one. I mean, partners generally do come along to consultations, and I think that's really helpful. And when I see someone with balance disorder, I, of course, work through the medical diagnosis, but actually getting the diagnostic label and getting my patient and their family to understand what's actually going on, I think is really important. And I think when a partner comes in to those consultations, and they're long consultations, and they get to understand that their partner isn't alone and this is a real thing, and they understand what they're going through, from my medical perspective, that's the key to starting recovery and sort of an inclusive recovery where the whole family help and understand.
Lovely. One thing
I have quite a few.
Sorry, Michaela.
So I was just going to say I have quite a few partners come into the rehab sessions as well, so they can hear how their partner is progressing with their exercises, with how they're dealing with the difficulties they're having. But they also have an opportunity to hear kind of an outside response to that sufferer's experiences. And I think them hearing somebody outside being able to say, yes, well, if you're having this difficulty, you're probably going to have difficulty with this, and this. And the patient saying, well, yes, that's all that I am having those difficulties. The partner hearing it from someone else, kind of an unbiased interaction, I think can be very helpful. And yeah. I know you've got the system set up there on Life on the Level for partners to contact as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful thing.
We've got a newly formed WhatsApp group for members' partners. And I think, like I said, it's really important where partners can then talk to other partners and probably be amazed or not that they're facing very similar challenges. The one thing I've said this about a general communication, family, friends, intimate partners, whoever, we have to remember no one has the power of telepathy. So if we don't explain, if we don't say what is really going on and what are we worrying about, they'll never know. I think I always remember until I had Meniere's, I'd never heard of it. I couldn't spell it. I had no idea what a balance condition could do to anybody's life. So there's no reason all my friends and family, since they've never had a balance problem, there's no reason why they should understand it unless I help them. So a little bit of burden is always on my shoulders to make sure people understand what it is and how it sometimes does affect life. Any other comments before we move on? Pippa, anything to add?
Yeah. So also, as well as helping them understand what it's like, also what you need from them, because they might not know quite how to respond. And so it might be worth clarifying exactly what support you want from them when you're having a difficult time. The other thing you could do, and also like the thing Professor Rea mentioned earlier, that might be good for them to listen to too, to see what it's like to have a balance disorder, but process the emotions about feeling invalidated and about not getting your needs met in the way that you want to from your partner. So we can't control other people's behavior, but we can process all the emotions involved and maybe write him an unsent letter to process kind of any anger that he's not getting it, that he's not validating how you're feeling, that he's not meeting your needs, and then any sadness, both for him and for you, because it's sad for him that he doesn't know what to do potentially, and it's sad for you that you're left feeling more alone in this than you would like. And then any gratitude you have about having him, any perspective, and then make a plan about what you're going to say to him and what you're going to do about it going forward once all the anger's been processed, so that the anger isn't coming out to him in that moment. So then you've processed the anger. He's not going to hear that anger from you when you're speaking to him about it, which would make him more defensive.
Okay, good. And Andrew, final comment from yourself.
Well, I just think that being believed is the best Christmas gift that someone can give you, So it's about being believed, isn't it? And in many ways, that's more important than the cure for this, is being believed and accepted that this is real.
No, quite true. Lovely. I'm going to ask Claire if Claire can now, we switch to members-specific questions that they've submitted. And a lot of these are going to go, understandably, to Professor Rea. And just to remind you, Peter, we are under extreme time pressure here. So we could do with rattling through these questions as quickly as possible. So Claire, are you ready to put the first question from Sophia to Peter?
Okay, first one. Please could I ask whether an antibiotic such as metronidazole, why do I always get these ones, could cause or significantly worsen triple PD? This was the case for me last year, and I've still not returned to my baseline triple PD. I'm aware the tablet can impact the brain, and I would be interested to hear your opinion.
Great question, quite an interesting question. There's two answers to it. The first is, if you're taking an antibiotic, by definition, you're unwell. And any intercurrent illness, whether it's a metronidazole requiring antibiotic or other, will worsen the balance condition, because your brain is working at the limit of its ability, just on the edge, and anything can knock it off. The second part of it is metronidazole specifically. I imagine a large number of us listening have had metronidazole. I remember having it as a teenager when I had a dental infection. You often get it for dental root infections, for abdominal infections. It gives you a horrible metallic taste in your mouth. But it also has some nasty side effects. You certainly mustn't drink alcohol with it, because you'll feel so dizzy, nauseous and sick if you do. But occasionally metronidazole is an odd drug because it can collect in the brain, particularly if you have a long course of it. It collects in the cerebellum, which is the balance part at the back of the brain, and that can cause dizziness and ataxia and abnormal movements. So for it to cause a chronic condition like that, it's pretty uncommon. It's not something I'll see routinely. Could it cause long-standing problems after taking it? Not that I'm aware of. I would have thought the effects of the metronidazole have gone once you've stopped taking it. And it's more likely that it's just upset your underlying triple PD and sort of exacerbated the symptoms you had before.
Okay, next question's from Sue. She's recently been informally diagnosed with Meniere's and is still awaiting a formal diagnosis. When she went for a private hearing test, she was told that they only typically see Meniere's disease patients maybe once or twice a year. And she went to the hearing practice and they said they'd seen 4 new cases. Do you think this is just a coincidence, or are the numbers of people with Meniere's disease and other balance disorders growing exponentially?
Okay, the short answer is it's a coincidence. The Meniere's affects 1 in 1,000 population, so it's an uncommon disease rather than a rare disease. We have a Meniere's registry where we have hundreds of thousands of data points on our patients with Meniere's. We have 411 of our patients on that, for example, and I know some of you have contributed to that, so thank you for that. The second bit I'd like to sort of comment on that is I'm a little uncomfortable with an informal diagnosis of Meniere's because this is a really specific medical diagnosis. And I know when I started out here over 20 years ago, I kept a little informal list of patients I've been sent with Meniere's, and half of them didn't have Meniere's disease. So get a formal diagnosis, and no, it's not increasing in frequency.
Okay. Next question from Angela. Do you think I need a clear diagnosis on suspected POTS, postural tachycardia syndrome, to be able to successfully treat and manage my diagnosed triple PD? I've had a range of tests via local cardiology, which showed episodes of sinus tachycardia, which is suggestive of POTS. I am often unsure when I feel lightheaded if I should reassure myself that I'm safe and carry on, which is the advice for triple PD, or whether I should just sit down ASAP, which is the advice for POTS.
Right, that's a difficult one. So there is quite a strong overlap between POTS and triple PD. POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. What that is when our patients with this condition stand up, the heart starts pumping more rapidly, so you get a fast heart rate, and that's to overcome the slowness of the body's response to a change in blood pressure to try and stop you feeling faint. In contrast, triple PD, persistent postural perceptual dizziness, is a long-term chronic balance disorder where there's a conflict of sensory information from the eyes, the ears, and the brain. So they're 2 different disorders, but actually they're conditions we see really very commonly together, most commonly in young ladies. That's the commonest combination we'll see in that group. What's the advice? Well, I think the first thing is to establish a definitive diagnosis of POTS, you probably need tilt table testing, which is where you get strapped to a table, lie flat, and then you get tilted up, and you have to stand up for ages, and they can put things under your tongue to dilate your blood vessels and make you faint. They don't offer that to everyone with POTS, so it's often a clinical diagnosis, and only if you're perhaps losing consciousness or really very unwell with it might they put you through tilt table testing. So I think just treating each syndrome, each condition symptomatically is the right thing to do. So yeah, with POTS, getting up a little bit more slowly than usual. But with triple PD, I really want you to keep active, because one of the problems is if you have triple PD, that reduces your activity, you decide not to move so much, you sit down more, then your body deconditions, your heart responds less well to changes in pressure, and your POTS gets worse. Bit complicated, but the bottom line of that is keep active.
Next question is for Michaela.
Sorry, could I just add to that one very quickly? So lots of people have recovered from POTS using a neuroplastic symptom approach. And if she's interested, she can look at Gigi Cockell's recovery story on the Cure for Chronic Pain podcast by Nicole Sachs. But there are a few of them recovery stories for POTS on there.
Yes, if you can find a link for it and drop it in the chat at some point, or I'll ask Kevin to do it. Next question for Michaela. Do you think vestibular rehab needs to be done by a neurophysio with expertise in treating dizziness, or would any neurophysio who has completed VR training be able to do it?
I think the key is finding someone who's speciality and interest is in vestibular issues. So whether it's a neurophysiology physiotherapist, whether it's a physiotherapist, vestibular audiologist, it's finding that person with that interest in vestibular and dizzy issues. Obviously, when somebody goes for the training, then it takes time to build up expertise with experience. But it's finding the right person for you. So if you've not had much success with the person that you've seen, potentially ask for a second opinion, either with somebody else in that department or potentially looking elsewhere.
Back to Peter again. Question from John. Is there any update on the vestibular implant for bilateral vestibular failure?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question. So there are several centres around the world, principally Europe and America, who are developing electrical implants which you can put in surgically. So drill the mastoid bone away behind the ear, and the 3 semicircular canals of balance are in there, and you can insert electrodes into them or place electrodes on them. You may have heard of cochlear implants, which are ears for people who have lost all their hearing in both ears. You can slide that into the cochlea, and it's an extraordinary development, and actually get hearing back good enough to use on the telephone for people. So the answer to the question is, yep, there certainly are developments and progress in that. What people are tending to trial at the moment is a cochlear vestibular combined implant. So these are for patients who have lost both their hearing and balance in both ears. Now, bilateral vestibular failure is pretty rare. It's about 1 in 50,000 population. But it's absolutely devastating. As you walk, the wall pops up and down, that's oscillopsia, and it has a profound impact on our patients who have this. So the trials are still going on. I mean, these are serious medical devices. A number of people have been implanted worldwide. They're only being implanted in clinical trials at the moment, in the UK yet, but when they are available, we will undoubtedly start doing them in the UK. But at the moment, the emphasis seems to be on people who have both profound hearing loss and bilateral vestibular failure, loss of balance function in both ears. But I'm absolutely sure that over the coming years, it will roll out to be uniquely, and it will roll out for vestibular failure without hearing loss. So I think I'll give you a timeline on it, but there's a lot of money going into this in the centres that are developing. So this is potentially a very good news story.
Next question is for Pippa. It's an anonymous one. Whoever it is, suffered for many years with severe anxiety due to chronic balance condition. They've so little confidence left that they're scared to even seek professional help with the anxiety. Can you recommend any steps you can take at home, maybe websites or books, to try and build up the courage to help? They're very trapped.
So first off, I'm sorry, that sounds really, really hard. The Steady Coach Free course covers both anxiety and chronic dizziness and how to recover from them both simultaneously. Anxiety is often caused, and I might sound random saying this, but by blocking emotions. So like when big core emotions like anger come up or sadness, if we've learned from a young age, we're not allowed to feel that, we can just block it, shut it down, and then feel anxiety instead. So accessing those core emotions in some way can help you prevent the anxiety, essentially, and get underneath it, get to the root of it. There's a book called Anxiety RX, which is really good for anxiety. Meditation can be really helpful. Emotional journaling can be really helpful. And also witnessing the physical sensations of anxiety without the story can help just allow it to be there and let it process and work itself through and lead to like a calmness. So in a way where you're not getting overwhelmed with it. So just observe the sensations of anxiety in your body. When the thoughts come in and make it all about symptoms, let go of the thoughts, recognize it might not be entirely about this. And this could be something to do from 30 years ago or whatever. But now we're just going to be with the fear as a sensation in the body and witness it, knowing that we are not the fear, we are the observer. So, yeah, I mean, there's more on that on my talk. I think I did a little exercise with Nicola, which you might want to watch as well about that.
Thanks, Pippa. Back to Peter again. This question's come from Jane. I've heard that taking an ultra-high dose of vitamin D can prevent recurrence of BPPV. Is there any evidence of this? And if so, what would you say is the recommended dose?
Yep, that's another great question. So there's really strong evidence that very low vitamin D is associated with recurrent BPPV. So BPPV is the condition where you get little crystals, calcium crystals in the ear that break off, and when you look up, lie down, roll over, you spin. It's very, very common. It affects about 1 in 40 people in the population. But it's not rocks in the ear. It's really a living biological disease. And in a way, it's a bit like osteoporosis of the ear. It's not, but I think it's a nice way of thinking about it. So vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin, and we don't get a lot of that here. So everyone in the UK should probably be taking vitamin D over the winter months. We certainly have some in the cupboard at home as well. And ladies, if you wear makeup, even if you think you go out in the sun a lot, that's going to have some protection in it. So that's going to stop you getting vitamin D as well. So I've just been lecturing on this in Bahrain a couple of days ago, just flown back in, and they get really bad vitamin D deficiency over there, yet it's such a sunny country because they put sunblock makeup on. So just a good example. So should we be taking vitamin D? Well, that's slightly more difficult. There is some evidence that taking vitamin D will reduce the relapse rates of BPPV. It's not as strong as showing that severe vitamin D deficiency is associated with BPPV, but I do recommend everyone takes it with recurrent BPPV. I don't even do blood tests for it. I just recommend you take it. Ultra high dose, that's a little bit more difficult. Be careful because vitamin D is not risk-free. If you have renal disease, kidney disease, for example, taking too much vitamin D can do you harm. So assuming you don't have these other medical conditions, without massive scientific evidence, I recommend my patients take 2,000 international units daily. For most adults in the UK, 400 international units daily is the daily requirement. But I think if you take 2,000 international units daily, certainly over the winter months, that's going to be safe and it'll probably reduce your relapse rate.
Thank you. Next question is for Andrew. This comes from Simon. He suffers with vestibular migraine and Meniere's, and sometimes when he touches the side of his head that is affected, he can hear an electrical noise or resonance as well as the tinnitus. Have you any ideas that what that might be, and are they related?
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? I think it's a combination of things. I think what you're getting there is some crosstalk between the different sensory systems. And one thing about vestibular migraine and Meniere's is you have a heightened sensitivity anyway. So even though you might have things like hearing loss, your sensitivities increase, I think, in those conditions. So, you know, on the skull, I mean, Peter will explain this better than I can, but on the skull, your balance and your hearing are kind of wired into your jaw and your neck area. And so if you're pressing on the side of the skull, you're affecting the nerves, the way the nerves transmit signals. And that could manifest as some kind of buzzing sound or electrical-like sound. Certainly, if I do it now, my tinnitus changes when I press in various locations here. So I can affect the tinnitus. So I guess it's a version of that. But obviously, I'm not a medical person, and Peter is. So in some ways, he should probably say something too.
Thanks, Andrew. That's a really good answer. I've just got a couple of comments just to add to that. With vestibular migraine, when we're trying to diagnose migraine, not everyone gets a headache with migraine. So 10% of migraine attacks occur without headache. 10% of migraine attacks occur with vertigo. That's vestibular migraine. And the two key questions we ask our patients are, do you get light sensitivity with your attacks, and do you get sound sensitivity with the attacks? So those are the two classical ones that everyone with migraine knows. There is a third symptom called allodynia, and that's sensitivity to touch. And actually, one of my colleagues in London did a really nice paper on that a year or two ago, showing that allodynia, sensitivity to skin touch, is strongly associated with vestibular migraine. So that's point number one. Point number two is a little bit off center. But there is another. But make sure your diagnosis of Meniere's and vestibular migraine is correct, because there is a less common condition called superior semicircular canal dehiscence syndrome, a bit of a mouthful, which is where the superior semicircular canal of balance is not within bone, but the top of it is actually exposed as the bone just thins as we get older or after a head injury, and pressure change or sound transmission through the skull goes in through this third window into the ear. So occasionally, if you can hear your eyes moving in your head, That's a classical symptom of superior canal dehiscence syndrome. And you'd also hear extra sounds. So just make sure that's not an incorrect diagnosis. But that's a little bit small print.
Sorry, can I just say another option is a conditioned response? So like in a Pavlov's dogs type of scenario where he rang the bell when presenting them with food and the dogs salivated. And obviously, normally there will be no connections in the brain between the auditory system and salivation. But because these things were paired together, every time they heard the bell, even when there was no food, they salivated. So it could be that your brain has made an association between this part of my head is touched, and then I hear this weird electrical noise in the same way. But you can unlearn conditioned responses, and Pavlov's dogs did when he played the bell without food for a long time. So you can do that by pairing it with pleasant things, reducing your fear around it, reminding yourself your brain's just making a mistake and this is a safe sensation, touching my head. And it can be unlearned if that's what's going on. Obviously, there is somatosensory tinnitus, as Andrew mentioned, and 80% of people with tinnitus do have some sort of somatosensory element to it. But really, to me, this sounds potentially more like a conditioned response.
Okay. Next question for Michaela. This comes from Steve. He suffers with bilateral vestibular failure, triple BD, and oscillopsia. He finds travelling in a car as a passenger challenging, like being on a roller coaster. It provokes fear. They feel like he's not in control. Do you have any advice on coping with this, as he generally just has to shut his eyes?
I mean, that's certainly a difficult combination of conditions to live with and to experience. With regards to driving as a passenger, when we're sitting in the car, we're often looking out the side window and there's lots of movement that we're seeing. We're looking out the window but not really anticipating what's coming. We're turning a lot to talk to the people that's driving. There's a lot of head movement involved. There's a lot of visual stimulation. So that does tend to be a very challenging situation for balance issues anyway. Being able to possibly reduce the head movement just while you're in the car, so you're looking at where you're going as if you were the driver, so you're anticipating what's coming and your brain can start to kind of make the adjustments for that in anticipation and reduces symptoms that way. Things like breathing techniques to help calm the brain, meditation, guided visualizations, distraction techniques of listening to things, so you can like audiobooks or something like that possibly. But yeah, find ways to just calm and let the brain soothe a little rather than focusing on everything and building up.
The Steady Coach also has a somatic tracking exercise for being in transport, and that involves observing the sensations that come up when you're in the car through a lens of curiosity and ease rather than through a lens of fear. I love what you said, by the way, Michaela, but I'm just trying to be clear to it. Yeah, so that's something to consider. Also, like you said, you can visualize doing on the transport before you're actually there and process the fear and the emotions that come up, visualizing it so that you've got less coming up when you're actually in the thing, and to teach your brain it's safe with like practice reps through visualization.
Thanks, both of you. I'm going to pass back to Kevin for this next question.
I was going to say you rest because you're on at the interlude, so you take a rest. I've got a really silly question, but I don't mind asking these. I had my 10-year-old nephew staying with me recently who suffers with really bad travel sickness, car sickness, and emotion. Is that, Peter, is that a balance disorder, or is travel sickness something completely different, or it can be both?
It can be both, but they're almost in, and you get adult migraine. So 70% of children who get car sick get adult migraine. So one of the questions I always ask my patients when they have recurrent vertigo, when we're not sure what it is it Meniere's, BPPV, migraine, is were you travel sick as a child? And if you were, it greatly increases the likelihood that it is a migrainous condition. And it's this concept of hypervigilance, it's hypersensitivity to visual stimuli. And you can see the importance of that, because ultimately it's a visual vestibular mismatch. And you can do this little thought experiment at home. So if you just put your thumbs out in front of you like this, I want you to just look at your thumbs, and I want you to rock backwards and forwards looking at your thumbs. Now, if you're anything like me, and I do get migraine, I feel a little bit queasy doing that. And the reason I'm queasy, I'm moving your thumbs at the same time, Kevin. So you're doing this. Yep. So you're moving your thumbs with you, rocking like this. So that's the same as looking at the bottom of a boat when you're sitting on a boat. And your eyes are telling your brain you're not moving. And your ears are telling your brain you are moving. And that conflict between visual and vestibular inputs to the brain is the fundamental problem of balance problems. So when you're in a boat, what do? You look at the horizon, don't you? So the eye can see the horizon is moving, and the ears tell the brain that the boat is bobbing as well. And that's why when you're in a car, you do not sit reading a book in the back if you've got travel sickness, because you'll be very sick. You try and concentrate on the outside, or you put a blindfold on. Super.
Lovely. Right. Questions. And again, we've got to speed through these as quickly as we can. This one's from Dina. For many patients, receiving the right diagnosis for a vestibular disorder is only the beginning of a very exhausting journey that affects them neurologically, physically, and emotionally. Very few are truly prepared for what comes next. Most people feel they're left on their own to navigate a path that is both terrifying and bewildering, with little guidance on what to expect. The mental resilience required to endure the daily onslaught of symptoms and the anxiety that often accompanies conditions is immense. The gap between receiving a diagnosis and actually understanding the lived reality of vestibular disorders, especially chronic ones like triple PD and VM, is often vast. Simply naming the disorder and prescribing medication is only one piece of what should be a broader biophysiosocial approach. What can physicians do to better prepare their patients for this journey? So Peter first, please.
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's a very long process, isn't it? I think getting a diagnostic label is very, very helpful, because the first thing that our patients worry about is that it is in their head. It's a phrase that's come up several times already this morning. And knowing that there is a diagnosis is very helpful. But I think for me, it's really getting my patients to understand the nature of their condition, what's actually going wrong in their balance organ, in their brain, whatever it is, so that they're empowered to be in control of it and to understand it, and to enlist the assistance of others who might help them on that journey. And I, as a doctor, can give a diagnosis, I can give medicines, maybe I can give injections, and I can initiate certain treatments. But having a network of colleagues who may be physiotherapists, psychologists, and so on, to assist in that journey, I think is really important.
Very good. And Pippa, please.
I mean, I think he answered that perfectly. Physicians don't have the same amount of time as we do as audiologists to go through all the details, but also like empathy and, like you said, validating that the symptoms are real, listening to the story, making sure they feel heard and not dismissed. But yeah, I think Peter answered that really, really well.
Super. Okay, if we can speed on. From Samantha, I would really appreciate some tips for travel from the experts, particularly planes, boats. Motion induces fear. I think we've kind of covered a lot of that with the previous question. Just simply on planes, my own experience, planes do not bother me at all. I'm sat quite snugly. I've got a belt on, and I tend not to even feel as though I'm traveling. But anything from our panelists on travel that we've not mentioned already, specifically flying?
With flying, my recommendation is try and reduce the stress of the journey. And that stress might be a visual stress, a noise stress in the airport. And if you can afford going into a business class lounge, that's a really good thing. Just try and tuck yourself away in the corner. Drink alcohol, try and avoid caffeine, keep yourself well hydrated. And on the plane itself, see if your other half will upgrade you to business class while they're in economy. That actually, strangely, that does help, truly. And you have my permission to ask now for Christmas. The other two things I would do is balance is a sensory stimulation problem. And if you can cut out that sensory stimulation, I think that's really helpful. So on a plane, you've hydrated yourself, you've looked after your body, you've not got too tired beforehand, you've not taken alcohol, you've not taken caffeine. Wear a blindfold to cut out any visual stimulation. Wear noise cancelling headphones, put nice bright music on, relaxing music on. And actually that combination is really fantastic. And if you need to take medicine, Cenarazine, Stugaron can be helpful. And if you're, I think the question is really interesting because the last bit, and I'm sure Pippa's got something to say there, is it's the last 4 words that are actually key in your question. And that is, it induces fear in me. So that needs addressing. And for some of my patients, it may be that a diazepam, you remember diazepam, Valium, Mick Jagger's Mama's Little Helper tablet? Yep. Take a sleeping tablet, will get you through the flight without difficulty, but I didn't say that.
Pippa,
you can also book onto things like airport assistance. So whether that's with the airline or with the airport itself, you can actually arrange to have somebody that helps you through the security checks and through the line. So you essentially kind of get taken through the queues and get taken to the gate, and that can be really, really helpful and give yourself way more time than you think you're going to need to, so you're not having to rush.
Lovely.
I would say also
Sorry, go ahead.
So process all the emotions about it before you go. So do your prep work. So that might be through journaling, but everything that's not related to symptoms. So like look for, and I know this sounds like I sound like an angry person, but the reason why I'm saying write your anger is because it can be hard to access for people. So looking for like any fear about things that are not related to symptoms. So about being late for the flight, missing the flight, whatever, the flight crashing, like random things that your inner child would be scared of, things your inner child would be angry about, like having to sit there for 3 hours waiting, all of that kind of thing, and be confined in a place for so long on the flight. So, and then any sadness that this process is harder than it needs to be. So, and then gratitude and perspective, you're able to go. So processing all the emotions before you go. Also, as I said before, witnessing and taking the fear with you. You can talk to your fear like it's a little child. Come on, honey, it's okay. I'm here with you. I've got you, all that kind of thing. Really gentle, nice voice to the fear as an object in your body. And I forgot what else I was going to say.
That will do.
But yeah.
That's
okay.
Good. And Andrew, you had your hand up earlier.
I was
just really quick. I wanted to add a lot of people with triple BD and vestibular migraine and MDDS, the symptoms are actually better on holiday. So like just kind of reminder, it might not all be bad. It might actually be better when you get that. And also the threat response is cumulative. So start off with small journeys that feel safer and then build up to bigger ones.
Lovely. Andrew?
I was going to reinforce the assistance. I after a particularly horrendous trip to Norway several years ago, I finally gave in and got assistance. And you always feel a bit of a fraud doing it until you actually do it, and then you realise, no, that was really necessary because I'm now on the plane and I feel all right, or I'm on the train and I feel okay. And the other thing in the chat, someone's posted about noise cancelling headphones, and I really recommend those. They're just brilliant for reducing sensory issues.
Yeah, good. My final comment on it, and this is a general one, because obviously everyone knows their level of anxiety and capabilities, but wherever you can, go for the challenge of getting out. Get out of that house and travel. I remember not traveling for several years, and I made it to a first holiday abroad. I very rarely have tears in my eyes, but when I stood on a hotel room balcony somewhere sunny, I felt as though life had just suddenly got so much better and getting back to normal. So if you can steel yourself, make those journeys, it's well worth it. Really going to have to accelerate through. Next question is from Ray for Michaela. Would any of my balance problems be because I am type 2 diabetic? I've never suffered from dizziness or spinning. I do have bad balance while standing and walking, sometimes double vision. I don't know how to get my vision back to normal with eye exercises in a few minutes, or I do know how, sorry. Michaela, any thoughts? Any experience there? Diabetes and balance?
To an extent, so diabetes, we're moving more into the medical field rather than vestibular.
Yeah.
Diabetes can cause what's called peripheral neuropathy, so numbness and loss of sensation in the feet or in the lower legs, potentially also in the hands. If there is peripheral neuropathy there, if there is numbness and the sensation of the floor isn't so good when you're standing, obviously that will have a big impact on how you feel with your balance when you're standing and when you're walking around. That's not necessarily vestibular, it's not being able to feel the floor. And ear exercises won't help with that. That's something you'd need to discuss with a diabetic consultant, and I'll let Peter take further.
Peter.
Yeah, I mean, Michaela's spot on. Peripheral neuropathy is a really big thing. So as we get older, unfortunately, lots of different bits of us stop working. And we have this term of multisensory or multi-system balance disorder, where there are lots of different problems that add together. It's called getting old. But with diabetes specifically, that's the really big one. So as many as 10-15% of our patients over the age of 15 have a peripheral neuropathy, and diabetes is possibly the commonest cause of that, as a loss of pinprick sensation in the feet. But diabetes does a lot of other things to the body. It can cause diabetic retinopathy, so your vision can get worse. It can cause an autonomic neuropathy, and this causes your blood pressure to not respond so quickly when you stand. So you stand up and you feel lightheaded. It can make cerebrovascular disease more likely, so wear and tear on the brain, and the more of those changes you've got on your brain, the more dizzy you're likely to be. So there's a whole range of different things. That's a very, very medical answer, isn't it? But there's a whole range of different things that diabetes can do. So keeping the weight down, keeping diabetic blood glucose control as good as possible is really, really important if you are diabetic.
Super. Question from Angela for Peter. How common a symptom is triple PD in pre-syncope, feeling faint, and how should you treat it? I've been told it isn't a triple PD symptom.
Oh, well, no, I disagree with that. I mean, lightheadedness is one of the classical symptoms of triple PD. And there's a couple of things to say here. Triple PD, persistent postural perceptual dizziness, or 3PD, isn't a disease like a broken bone or appendicitis. Triple PD is a cluster of symptoms that patients present with that have a range of potential causes. And the three biggest things we see leading to it are an inner ear problem, BPPV or vestibular neuronitis, migraine, and anxiety. A history of any three of those often lead on to symptoms of triple PD. But the range of symptoms is huge, and lightheadedness is one of them. Walking on a sponge, cloudiness in the head, forgetfulness, I feel like I'm on a boat. There's a whole range of symptoms that triple PD can present with, and some of them can overlap with other symptoms such as postural hypertension and other conditions. So there's definitely an overlap between the two. And then, as I mentioned in one of the earlier talks, if the symptoms prevent you from moving, so you decondition, this then becomes another really important concept medically in balance problems, in that you get up less, you walk less, your muscles get weaker, and of course we lose 1% of muscle a year over a certain age, and then the body just responds less well to movement. Your balance system rusts up. So yeah, there can certainly be an overlap of symptoms.
Super, lovely. Right, we've now got a question from Catherine. 2-year wait to see a consultant in audiology, who eventually sent a letter saying there's nothing out of the ordinary. As a consultation, I don't recall any tests, just a couple of questions, mainly him talking about himself. Sounds odd. It also said some people are just born with certain things and we have to put up with them. Obviously, it's not life-threatening, but how do I deal with it daily now? Apologies, don't know the diagnosis there, but it sounds like, again, I have to say, not an unusual experience from a member who's struggling to get treatment. Michaela, any thoughts?
I mean, certainly it's important to see someone that their speciality and interest is in balance. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, that get sent through to departments where there isn't necessarily somebody whose thing is vestibular issues. It's perfectly okay to ask for second or third opinions, or to seek advice and help elsewhere if you've not gotten anywhere with where you are.
Super.
Whether that's on the NHS or privately.
Yeah. Janine, this is for Peter. Which type of GP is responsible for diagnosing eye movement disorders that stem from the vestibular system? For what specific examination should I look if symptoms occur due to visual stimuli and emotion moving my head? Eye movement disorders that drive dizziness I most likely struggle with are, and apologies for pronunciation, optokinetic system, visual stimuli motion triggers dizziness by normal X movement, and vestibular ocular reflex, head movement turning the body, keeping the head still. My diagnosis is visual vertigo, triple PD, vestibular neuritis. Peter.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I think the first thing is I wouldn't expect a GP to be able to diagnose abnormal eye movements in the context of those diagnoses, and you shouldn't have abnormal eye movements with those particular diagnoses. The people who will diagnose abnormal eye movements are doctors like me, so an ENT surgeon or an audiovestibular physician with a particular interest in balance. If you have complex eye movements, neuro-ophthalmologists and neurologists also get involved to see if there's a brain element to the abnormal eye movement. So it's a different group of people. What you're experiencing are visual symptoms rather than abnormal eye movements, I suspect. But this is where we do tests like VNG, video nystagmography, where you wear the infrared goggles and we can look at your eye movements under infrared control. And Michaela does our testing for us. And then we can really get to the root of the problem. Is this an ear problem? Is it an eye problem? Is it a brain problem? So we really do want to assess these. So I think it would not be reasonable to expect a GP to be able to analyse this. This is too complex. You'd need to see a specialist in a balanced clinic.
Super. Janine, again, for Michaela, do you have experience with audio biofeedback? Does it reduce dizziness symptoms? My neurologist who helped on my examination found a unilateral problem in the Equimed measurement. That measures an inner ear disbalance of the vestibular organ. They proposed a specific headset. It's a German company. What it does is biofeedback with noises. I know nothing of this. Michaela, do you know anything of this?
It's not one I'm familiar with. We were having a chat beforehand about the Equimed measurement, and I think we possibly mean the Equitest, which is what we call postrography, platform moves, surrounding moves. But it's yeah, I'm not very familiar with the audio biofeedback side of things. The headset I had a quick look at, and it emits sounds to kind of indicate when there's movement of the body, which I can, the side to side, I can see how that could potentially help, but that wouldn't necessarily help with the backward and forward motion. It's not something that I'm familiar with enough to give advice on.
No problem. Janine, final question from Janine for Andrew. Andrew, thank you for your expertise. How is diplacousis measured? Is there anything that's worth trying to soften the effects of this for you?
So in terms of measurement, there are ways of measuring it in clinic, but it's not often done, I think. And certainly I've never been measured. I've just developed my own homespun system where I block up one ear and then sing a pitch. And with my good ear, it's bang in tune. And then I block up the good ear and sing with the other ear, and it's out of tune. And I can work out what the diplacousis effect is by doing that, obviously only through the singing range. But there are more clinical ways, I think, of measuring this. But it's not a condition that is given a lot of attention. Although for me now, it has turned into probably the most debilitating aspect of Meniere's, ironically, after all these years of vertigo and hearing loss and tinnitus. Actually, it's the diplocusis that's causing me the most problem now, which because it affects listening to music so much. In terms of what you can do about it, well, I think it gets worse if you get tired. And a lot of the things that have already been said about preserving energy and relaxation will help. I mean, certainly I found there was a piano concert that I attended some months ago. And after about 10 minutes of listening, the music started to behave very strangely, and I was getting notes that actually appeared to glissando, boing, sort of noise coming off a note, which just wasn't there. And this was the diplocusis. And I think it was just my attention was getting tired, and I was just more and more tired. And I did use loop earplugs to lessen the sound coming in, so I could still hear the music, but it was reduced that way. Okay. The only other thing I'd say about diplocusis, because I've seen some comments about this following my appearance in the Daily Mail, which was not something I was expecting, but there it was. It is that blocking up the bad ear and trying to listen with one ear doesn't actually help. And I think it's because, this is my amateur theory again, the brain hears sound a certain way and has learnt how to hear sound. So even if you block up the bad ear, it doesn't remove the diplocusis. You still hear the diplocusis. So just reducing the amount of sound, the amount of listening you do, and trying to stay calm and relaxed is probably the best help I can offer, really.
I see this as a brain prediction error caused by a high alert nervous system. And so, again, exactly the same cause as triple PD and vestibular migraine, essentially. I'm in the process of creating a free online course in conjunction with the study coach for tinnitus, hyperacusis, and misophonia and other forms of sound sensitivity, dysacusis, diplocusis, all of them. So they can all be treated in exactly the same way. And again, it comes back to essentially responding to the sound differently to teach your brain it's safe, so that it's not going into extra high alert and misinterpreting safe signals as dangerous, and giving you the danger signal of diplocusis in response to it, combined with teaching your brain that you are safe in the world using all the strategies that are discussed in my talk. So everything that I said in my talk last month can be applied to diplocusis.
Super. Right, we've got a speed on gainer for Peter. Is there a link between triple PD and tinnitus? If so, what is it? I don't normally get tinnitus except when I have a triple PD attack. So it would be good to know what's going on from a physiological perspective.
A couple of things there. Triple PD tends not so much to cause attacks. It's a more sort of chronic type of symptom. So just be a little bit careful that you've got the right diagnosis. But as I mentioned with triple PD, there are three principal risk factors for it. One is a vestibular injury, an ear injury. Second is migraine, so you're hypervigilant and hyperalert. And the third is a history of stress and anxiety. And there are two principal causes of tinnitus. One is hearing loss and one is stress and anxiety. So the commonest triggers I'll see for patients with tinnitus are a row with the boss, bereavement, noisy neighbours, these sort of things. So you can see then that there's a common channel that if you are under particular stress or anxiety, and that can be an emotional stress, you've had a sad event occur in the family, for example, or it can be a physiological event, your balance is worse. That will also then drive the tinnitus. So I think it's not so much a direct physical link, it's that the two have got the same common drivers to them.
Super. Helen for Peter was diagnosed as a private patient. Despite sharing the diagnosis letter with my GP, it does not appear alongside other conditions diagnosed in the NHS. How should I address this with my GP, ENT and rheumatology?
Yeah, that's really strange, isn't it? I mean, I think the bottom line is who do you trust most? Who do you think gave you the correct diagnosis there? Now, there's always a range of opinion between experts, particularly in diagnoses that don't necessarily have definitive tests for them. But I think ultimately it has to be go with who you believe in, and be really careful about splitting care between NHS and private. I just think that's a dangerous thing to do, because you're going to get these mixed messages. You're going to get some tests duplicated. You're going to get some results missed. So my advice would be to stick with whoever you trust and believe in most, and go with whatever medical therapy route that they recommend.
Super. I've got just a very simple side question there. Many members are stuck into 1-2 year waiting lists, and understandably, life is on hold. A common question is it possible to dive into private medicine for tests or a consultation without being kicked out of the NHS system? Is there any general guidance here?
Yeah, no, the government guidelines is that you either follow an NHS path or a private path. And I think that, most government guidelines, of course, most of us don't agree with. But I think this is probably sensible, because the problem is if you follow two different paths, particularly with two different doctors, and even more with two different centres, and in some of my cases with two different continents, it's actually really, really difficult. And you get conflicting information. You're not quite sure what tests have been done. What you can do is, rather than follow them in parallel, I think you can follow them in series. So you can get an NHS consultation. You can decide you didn't get out of that what you wanted, and then you can move over to a private system. They may give you a different diagnosis, they may do different tests, and then when that's complete, you can then move back into an NHS system. Now, historically, once you move over to private, or vice versa, the other system closes. So once you become a private patient, then your NHS referrals close. And I actually think that's one of the few sensible decisions the NHS have made, because I do think it's high risk running both systems together, because you'll just get conflicting information. It'll cause stress and anxiety, and it will cause results to be missed. But once you're in a private system, once you've got as far as you want to go privately, then absolutely you can go back into the NHS, and very large numbers of my patients do that.
Super, thanks. Thank you very much, panel. That brings us to the interlude. So panelists, please have a rest for the next 10-15 minutes or so. I'm going to bring Claire back in now to talk us through a survey that nearly 100 members took part in. Claire is looking to improve the journey of balance disorder patients with audiology departments, primarily her own in Royal Preston to begin with, but we hope this will apply to other NHS departments around the country. So Claire, I'm going to try and share the slides now and let you talk through them. If we see if this works, hopefully it does. And you should be seeing something about now. Let me just try and get to the show. And there we go. Can you see that okay, Claire?
Yeah, that's all good.
Sharing,
Yeah.
that's good. Let me just try and find the controls. Here we go. So over to you, Claire, to talk us through this, please.
Okay, so just want to say a massive thank you for everyone that responded. Like, it was way more than I was expecting. So, it's just given us so much feedback that, and thanks to Suzanne as well, who's put all this together for me and got all my stats done, which has saved me, I don't know, hours of work. So, I will be presenting to my department initially, and then I'm also part of the Balance Interest Group for the Northwest. So it'll go to our regional thing as well. So all of the balance centres in the Northwest are going to be made aware of your feelings and your thoughts about how the balance system's working. I especially wanted to address Dina's question in the thing, which is, you wait so long for a diagnosis and then you're just sort of left. And this is what I want to address, and this is that's the one I want to change. That's my big thing, that we don't give you a diagnosis and then abandon you. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, there you go.
Okay, so this is some of the data that Suzanne has picked out for me. you can obviously see it on the screen, 61% of you had another underlying health condition. So, if you're already struggling with your health and then you've got a balance condition on top of that, it's gonna be hard. Only 10% of the respondents were advised of any support groups, which is another thing we want to change. Again, from what Dina said, that's the sort of thing that we can be telling people straight away. If you think you've got a balance problem, yes, get referred into audiology, into private or NHS, but give them something to look at in the meantime. But equally surprising, 70% were offered vestibular rehabilitation. So I don't know if this is more to do with whether you all live down south, because in the northwest, it's not something that we're able to offer regularly. We're just not funded to do it. So actually really pleased with that. And then a shocking last one, 5 years, there's an average number people had to wait from getting their first symptoms to receiving a confirmed diagnosis, which is just frightening. 5 years of just not knowing what's wrong. Next slide, please. Okay, so Suzanne's gone through and pulled out some of the main comments that kept cropping up. Like I said, as I just referred to, the average was 5 years. Like I said, some people had only waited months, but other people have waited 30 years to get this diagnosis. And I can't even imagine how frustrating that must have been. Again, next one, having to wait 1 to 4 years before they're named a condition. And that's where, like I said, everybody, mainly they said, losing their independence, losing their confidence, not wanting to go out, not participating, all of this that we could be doing something about sooner. Next one, treatment is starting too late. Again, something I massively agree with. Doing some vestibular exercises, the one with the finger, you've probably all been shown it. If the GP can provide that, it's not going to do anybody any harm to do it. We don't want them doing is telling everybody to go away and do the Epley remover without a diagnosis. But vestibular rehab exercises aren't going to do you any harm. So that's another thing that we need to get sort of earlier. Inconsistent offering of rehab. Like I said, 67 were offered it, 30 weren't. And like I said, it's the main treatment for getting your life back. Most of the positive stories came from people who said that their consultants actually listened to them, and I suspect that they were mostly on the private side. We are trying on the NHS, but the waiting times, the amount of patients to see, I suspect people are just being rushed through. Next, please. As well, I can't remember who made the comment in the questions, being told waiting 2 years and then said, well, it's just something you have to live with. That's just really, really disappointing. Next one again, like I said, the ones that said we had some that were taking the time, others exact opposite. The consultants aren't taking the time to listen. And half the time it's been heard and been feeling that you're understood. The next one was interesting again because we said several respondents talked about being sent for tests that weren't explained to them or they weren't confident interpreting. Now, it's a bit of a difficult one because especially in the NHS, you'll be referred to maybe ENT, they'll refer you to audiology who'll do the tests. We send the results to the consultants, but they're not trained vestibular audiologists. So I can see why that might be a bit confusing. I also know that a lot of them tend to do it as we'll rule this in or rule this out. We're not sure why you're dizzy, but we'll just run the tests anyway, which isn't an ideal situation. Last bit, on a more positive note, people, once they had that chat and got the confirmation of the diagnosis, and then people will believe them. And like I said, life-changing once you've got that. Next, please. Okay. I'm just going to let you have a quick look, obviously, time frame wise. What we did well listening, communication, thorough assessment, what we need to do better, reduce the delays, provide better explanations, absolutely, more proactive follow-up. This is my big one. That's where I want to be. What they shouldn't be doing, dismissing people, rushing people, performing tests they aren't trained for. I dread to who think that one was from. Next one. So again, a bit more of what we did well. Offered helpful rehab advice, which is good. Allowed patients to feel heard. Responded quickly in urgent or difficult moments. So again, that's surprising that we've. But again, I don't know if some of these responses were for people in the private sector. What we shouldn't be doing, downplaying it. Absolutely. Your comments today as well have just said people just get on with it. Suggesting inappropriate medications or unnecessary scans. I don't even know what to say. I don't know why GPs would go around medicating people without a confirmed diagnosis. And once you've got one, it's very rare that a medication will actually even help, apart from maybe Meniere's. Next. Okay, this is from the worst effects comments. Again, lots and lots of you. Isolation, loss of independence, loss of confidence, and not being able to plan. Next. And a few of you did manage to find some positives in all of this. So, learning to value your rest and accept that rest is not a break from activity. It's an activity in itself. It's something you do actively. You choose to rest. People have learned mindfulness, been more aware of their body and how they're feeling. Like I said, you can see all the answers on there. But, amazing that you've been able to find something positive out of this. Next. Yeah, big thank you. Amazing.
Very good. Well, big thank you to Claire for this, because I have to stress here, Claire is busy doing a day job, audiology at Royal Preston, and it was her idea to find out more from you, the experts by experience, the members. All of those questions put together by Claire, hours of work, then going through all the results. And we're not finished yet, because Claire is then going to present to her team. And we hope to use a similar presentation for many, many other NHS departments around the country. What we really hope comes from this, and I say this is Claire's initiative, it just gets people talking, discussing, having a conversation. Could things be done in a better way? Some of the things we think at no expense at all, but can things be done in a better way for balanced disorder patients? So brilliant work, Claire. Thanks ever so much for caring and wanting to do it. So well done you. And thank you to Suzanne, who pulled together the presentation that you've just seen. And I'm going to ask Suzanne to come in now, if I can find you. I'm going to pin you into the recording we're doing. Suzanne is a recently joined member, but wants to tell you a little bit about her project where you can help her. So, Suzanne, you start talking, and I'm going to find you in the many members and add you to the pin. Over to you, Suzanne.
No problem. Thanks so much, Kevin, and hello to everybody. I had the opportunity to listen to some of the previous meetings and watch them on YouTube, so I'm delighted to have the opportunity to be coming along myself. Just a little bit of background about me to put things into context. I was diagnosed with vestibular migraine last year following a 2-year plus period of progressively worsening symptoms. Like all of you here on the call, living through this experience has really changed how I experience the world, and has really changed my life in many ways. That's really driven me to take action, and the action that I'm taking is I'm planning to direct and produce my 7th documentary, which I'm currently calling The Ground Beneath Us. That may change, so don't hold me to that. The documentary is going to be a visual and sensory driven film that explores what happens when the world doesn't stay still. So to one of the questions earlier, on this meeting about how can you share with people what you're actually going through. My documentary will hopefully visually and through audio and visual help people feel and see what we all go through. It's going to be very much character-led, observational documentary, which will explore the lived experience of vestibular disorders through personal stories, medical insights, and advisory and advocacy. And that's really where I would like some help from some of you on the call. I'm really looking for people who would be willing to share your stories as part of the documentary. I really want to use this documentary as an opportunity to shine a light on vestibular disorders and give a voice to those of us living with these often unseen conditions. I really want to raise awareness and bring empathy and understanding, and hopefully inspire and encourage more healthcare professionals and students to engage in what is often an overlooked field. I really want to open up a conversation about these under recognized conditions, and really show the resilience of those of us who are living with this. I really want this to go out to a broad audience, but I think it will particularly resonate with anybody who has ever felt misunderstood or sidelined in any way. My hope is that the viewers leave with a really deeper understanding and respect for the complexity of vestibular disorders. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'm sure Kevin will kindly add it to a follow-up email as well. And I think what would be really helpful, if you would like to discuss the documentary in more detail, find out more, understand the timelines. I'm really starting to film from January, and hopefully be finished filming by the end of May, with the documentary being completely finished by the very latest November next year. I'm doing this in association with the University of the Arts London, where I'm currently studying a master's in documentary film. So it will be supported and backed by the university. I've also had the opportunity to speak to VEDA in the US as well, who are very supportive, and Kevin is also up to speed on what the plans are. But if you would be interested and willing to share your story, please reach out to me. I'll come and spend some time with you face to face. We'll meet in person. We'll get to know each other, because I think that's going to be a really important part of the process. And I'm really keen to do this in person rather than over video or anything like that. But I know we're tight on time, so I'll stop talking for now and pass you back to Kevin.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Suzanne. Life on the Level approach to this is, please help. We struggle to get anyone interested in balance disorders. One of my pet hobby horses is, if I could find a dizzy donkey, I could get more press coverage than we can for dizzy people, and we'd certainly raise a lot of money for balance charities. So please have a think if you could share your story, because if we don't do it, if we don't help our own community, no one else is going to bother. So let's do what we can. In the same vein, you may have seen the lovely story Steve Watkins a couple of months ago in the Daily Mail and Mail Online. That was ably assisted with a contribution from Professor Rea. We generated from that one story some 40 applications to join the support group, because otherwise people don't know we exist. As a result, Steve has accepted the unpaid position of head of Life on the Level PR. He can't be with us today, but I've got a very quick video from him, a message from him. And again, it's going to be a very similar thing in the new year. Steve will be very interested in getting members to contribute and share their stories. So we can hopefully try and get publicity. Now, hopefully you're going to see this and hear it. Shout up if you can't hear it.
Hi everyone, sorry I can't be with you in person today at the meeting, but I will be catching up on the video link afterwards. I just wanted to say hi, and life on the level for me has just been incredible. My balance journey has been 5 years now, and life on the level has really helped. And whilst I don't know everybody here, I've made some good friends within the group. And I just know that everybody feels like an extended family, really, because I know that you get it. I know that you understand the symptoms that we all face day in, day out. And that's just so special to know that there's other people out there going through this. And it means a lot. And to that, everyone's got a story, and going forwards, I've spoken to Kevin, and we've hopefully we'll be able to try and raise awareness together. So sharing our stories, your stories, will hopefully raise awareness, and I'll be looking at ways to try and get our stories out there, and get people to understand a little bit more about the balance conditions. Thanks very much for the opportunity. It's meant so much to me, and I know that we can also help other people that are suffering in silence and maybe scared, lonely, and all the emotions that we feel, on our journeys. By bringing them into to groups like this to get some support that we all need. Have a great Christmas. Thanks a lot, and hopefully I'll speak to more of you in the new year. Thanks, then. Bye bye.
Brilliant. And thanks to Steve, says tennis coach, career stopped brutally in its tracks by his condition. But Steve's come out fighting, and now he's going to help us all hopefully get that publicity. Right, we are going back to the panel. I have to say it's first, we've never managed to overrun time-wise so badly as we have today, but for very good reason. Brilliant questions and even better answers. So all I'm going to say is we will plod on through the questions, please. See where we get with them. Those I understand some members you might find over 2 hours a little too long. You can always switch your camera off, make another cup of coffee and stretch your legs or whatever. And remember, there will be a recording. So if you have to finish early, don't worry. But we'll try now and get through all of these great questions and I say all of the great answers. But where we can, panel, if we can speed through any, if there are some very quick answers, that will be brilliant. So I'm going to start off halfway through. I'll hand back to Claire when I lose my voice. But first question is for you, Peter, from Vimla. In addition to balance issues into my inner ear, which significantly affects my balance, I've also been diagnosed with small vessel disease in my brain and wondered if this can contribute to my balance issues.
Yes, very much. This is the work of Professor Adolfo Bronstein, as Professor of Neurology at Imperial. I did his after-dinner speech at his retirement a couple of weeks ago at the Royal College of Surgeons. So he's shown when you get an MRI scan of your brain, we often see little white dots on it, and we call that small vessel cerebrovascular disease. The risk factors for it are high blood pressure, smoking, raised cholesterol, getting older, and diabetes. So we test for those. And what Professor Bronstein found was that the more white dots you have on your MRI scan, the greater your imbalance. So the answer to your question is yes.
Super. Vimler again for Peter again. I've been prescribed beta histamine 16 milligram by the ENT consultant. However, my vestibular physiotherapist does not think that this would help to minimize the balance problem.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Beta-histine circ was primarily generated for Meniere's disease, and there's a really good paper in BMJ January 2016 by Michael Strupp, which shows if you take a high dose of beta-histine, it reduces your Meniere's attacks. If you take a low dose of beta-histine, it reduces your Meniere's attacks. And if you take a sugar pill, it reduces your Meniere's attacks by the same amount. So it looks like there's a significant placebo effect from beta-histine. But before completely writing it off, there does seem to be some vestibular sedative effect. So we, as doctors, therefore have an ethical problem. Is it ethical to prescribe a medicine that we're not sure if it works? Well, it has a very low side effect profile. Some people get a little bit of nausea. It may be able to suppress a little bit of imbalance. Some of our patients swear by it. If they miss a tablet, they can get really dizzy. We don't know if that's placebo, or what it may be is that Meniere's is the final common pathway of several different disease processes, and we haven't been able to subtype that yet. We're trying to. So it's possible some people find it helps. As a general rule, because you have to take 3 tablets a day and it's yet more medicine to take, I generally take my patients off beta-histine, but I don't have a strong opinion on it.
Okay, super. This one again for Peter, anonymously asked, I have vestibular hyperfunction on one side due to chronic vestibular neuritis, 2019, but still suffer from tinnitus, even though my hearing is perfect. This does seem to be affected by weather pressure fluctuations and is mostly gone in the summer or when the weather is calm. Balance and triple PD have improved, although I'm still sensitive to bright electric lights, cannot drive in the dark. Any ideas on why I have tinnitus with no hearing loss when I didn't before 2019, and how can I improve this?
Okay, so there's lots of bits to that. Vestibular neuritis is an acute condition. So it's either a virus, like COVID's a good example of causing it, or an ischemic event, so an interruption in blood supply to the inner ears. You can't really have chronic vestibular neuritis. You have acute vestibular neuritis, and that can lead to chronic vestibulopathy. So it's slightly pedantic, but there's no ongoing infection there. It's the damage that's done to your inner ear that doesn't necessarily affect the hearing. Now, we then make some comments about sensitivity to light and so on, and that does raise the possibility of this hypervigilance, which might be a consequence of stress and anxiety, or might be a consequence of vestibular migraine. So I think you need to explore your migraine risk factors and symptoms as well. And then we move on to the answer that I gave earlier, which was that there are 2 principal drivers of tinnitus. One is hearing loss and one is stress. And having a chronic balance disorder, as you all know, is incredibly physiologically stressful. It's certainly emotionally stressful as well, but it's physiologically stressful. Your body, your inner self, is under constant stress trying to maintain balance, and that is a typical driver of tinnitus. The second thing to say is that tinnitus is incredibly common. You know, all of us, if we go into a soundproof room, will get tinnitus. I mean, I don't hear tinnitus, but if I were to be in a soundproof room, I would hear it. And that really is the thing, that you've got a chronic balance disorder, which is driving stress within your body, which is driving the tinnitus. So the best way to manage that is going to be to try and control the balance disorder. And if there are any migrainous features to it, it's certainly worth looking at that as well.
Super. Again for Peter, sorry about this, all for you at the moment. From Christine, is it likely that triple PD and a problem with eye convergence is likely to be linked? I've been told it isn't, but there seems to be many people with both issues, and maybe that can't be a coincidence.
Oh no, I suspect it is linked. Now, there's 2 reasons for eye convergence. When we test patients, we do sometimes see convergence of the eyes, which is a non-pathological convergence. In other words, it's caused by stress and anxiety, and that's one possible explanation, because we know that triple PD is associated with that. But we also know that triple PD is primarily a central processing disorder of balance. In other words, the brain is handling the sensory information incorrectly, and that sensory information is primarily visual. That's the thing that gets you with triple PD, isn't it? So light around you, supermarkets, crowds, motions, passenger car, the normal sort of triggers for triple PD. So if you've got disturbed visual input, it would make sense that you would have a worsening of triple PD symptoms. So I think there probably is an association, yeah.
Super. And again, Peter from Bernadette, who couldn't attend today. I have chronic vestibular migraine and triple PD for 7 years. I've tried many treatments without any improvement. I've been taking, I can't even say this word, Atogenpant. No idea, Peter, if you know what there, for the last 6 months. Atogenpant for the last 6 months, with some minor improvements in frequency, severity, and length of migraine attacks. In the last few weeks, I've started taking an over-the-counter antihistamine for dust allergy. During this time, I've noticed significant improvements in my vestibular condition. I know there is some evidence, mainly anecdotal from the USA, that taking antihistamines for allergies can help people with migraines. But I'm wondering if there's something that the panel is aware of, and if they could advise which is the best antihistamine to take, and whether you can take this in the long term.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in there. So atogepant is one of the EPANTs, if you like. It's a CGRP inhibitor, which is a calcitonin gene related peptide. Now, these initially were monoclonal antibodies, so unbelievably expensive, injected into a vein. But the EPANTs, as this atogepant is one example, are taken by tablets, and they affect the receptors on the blood vessels in the brain, and they're actually pretty good migraine treatments. Now, we've got lots of different vestibular migraine treatments. We've got lots of different drugs we can use for migraine, and we've made an assumption that the same drugs that work for migraine will work for vestibular migraines. There's been relatively little work done in researching how effective they are for vestibular migraine. The CGRP inhibitors of which this is an example, is one of the classes where I think we are beginning to have emerging evidence that it can be helpful in vestibular migraine. So that's what that medicine is, and I think that's a good one to try if you're having a bad attack of vestibular migraine, sort of at least 2 attacks a month we would normally consider, and the other medications and dietary changes and so on haven't worked. So the second part of the question was, do antihistamines work? Well, I absolutely agree. There are significant reports that certain balance conditions are affected by allergy. Quite how they're affected is unclear. Is it just adding stress to the body, or is a more direct causal link? And of course, drugs like Stugaron, Cenarazine, work on histamine. So we already use these type of drugs to manage balance disorders. So Cenarazine would be the one that we use most commonly in that class. So yeah, I think there is a link, and I think it's worth trialing them. Can you use them in the long term? There's no particular reason you can't, but with Cenarazine, we generally use it just as a shorter term medicine.
Super, thank you. Bernadette again, this time for Michaela. I've had vestibular rehab therapy with an NHS physio for the last 2+ years, mainly gaze stabilization exercises, but this hasn't been successful as there has been no improvement, and the exercises tend to make things worse by triggering migraines. Can you suggest any alternative approaches or exercises which may help?
So the thing to remember is that symptoms for imbalance can be caused from a number of different things. So it can be caused by the migraine, it can be caused by the vestibular system, visual inputs, your stress levels, your tiredness, your generalized health. So it's not necessarily going to be a case of one thing resolves everything. And certainly if the exercises for the vestibular issue is aggravating the migraine, what I will often suggest is potentially we need to leave off the vestibular exercises, focus on getting the migraine fully under control. Once that's under control, then we have an easier time of dealing things with the vestibular system with the exercises. With migraine, it can be lifestyle changes, dietary changes, identifying particular triggers if that's possible. It can be medication that's required. So there's lots and lots of different things to potentially look at trying, not necessarily just kind of focusing just on the vestibular exercises. So a much wider view on things and looking at things like stress, doing meditations or breathing exercises, tackling any underlying issues with stresses and all these kinds of things. So there's lots of different threads involved potentially to help in there.
Pippa,
can I just add as well? So yeah, the Steady Coach free online course goes through a recovery program for migraine, and I recovered from vestibular migraine with no vestibular rehab exercises at all. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Question from Barbara is on the travel side again. So I'm not going to put that question because of time. And all I'm going to say, Barbara, is yes, do it. Travel. That was the question. Laura for Peter. A few months ago, I had microsuction for earwax in preparation for hearing aids for tinnitus. Unfortunately, I continue to have blocked ears, eustachian tube dysfunction, and slightly reduced hearing from the procedure. Although I have BPV, my balance has not been affected. I have been told several times there is nothing wrong, but it feels very uncomfortable, and I wonder if there is anything more I can do.
Yeah, no, a good question, and a very common question in clinic. The first thing, of course, to do is to make sure your diagnosis is right. I would just make a comment, though, that you said that your hearing is slightly reduced from the procedure. That's always a really difficult one. There are constructs where it's possible that microsuction could reduce hearing, but as a general rule, we go to our doctor or physician to have our ears cleared because we can't hear. So I wouldn't necessarily blame the microsuction for the hearing loss, would be the first thing I would say. Now, eustachian tube dysfunction is generally what's called as the cause of pressure in the ears, and the eustachian tube, if you pinch your nose and blow, is that little tube 28 millimeters long that goes from the back of your nose to your ear and ventilates the middle ear. And if you've got eustachian tube dysfunction, you can help it possibly with nasal steroids, or if it's absolutely terrible and you get pain on air travel or going up a hill in a car, you can put grommets in. But the thing is that most people with pressure fillings in the ear are told they've got eustachian tube dysfunction, don't have eustachian tube dysfunction. So the commonest causes are going to be temporomandibular joint dysfunction, that's jaw joint dysfunction, clenching your teeth. Have a look at your back teeth. If you've got lots of fillings on your back teeth, you may have bruxism, and maybe wearing a bite splint at night is helpful, or a muscle relaxant such as amitriptyline can be helpful. If you've got hearing loss on its own, that can cause a tension and a muscle tension in the ears. If you have Meniere's disease, one of the classical 4 symptoms of Meniere's disease is fullness in the ear. So I suppose what I'm saying to you is, don't assume that eustachian tube dysfunction is the diagnosis. Make sure you've got the correct diagnosis made for you.
Super, thanks. Another one.
It could be a neuroplastic symptom as well. So it could be your brain misinterpreting safe signals from your ears as a danger signal, and then kind of giving you a danger signal in response to this due to high alert nervous system. So again, exactly the same strategies as with other symptoms, changing how you respond to the pressure in your ear, reducing the danger around it, and also emotional processing and self-care and meditation and breathing exercises and everything else that teaches your brain you're safe in the world.
Lovely, thanks, Pippa. Question for Peter again. Rachel asks, I've heard that taking a magnesium supplement can help with dizziness. I would like to know what dose might be considered suitable for someone with triple PD and hyperacusis. I would check with my GP before starting to make sure the dose suggested was appropriate to take with my existing medication. Many thanks.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this one up, because this can be a useful starting place for treatment. There's not a lot of work on magnesium in tinnitus, to my knowledge. With triple PD, there are some reports that it can help triple PD, but I think primarily it's helping migraine and vestibular migraine, and it's usually used as a migraine treatment. You can take it on its own. There are lots of different combinations. Do remember one of them is Epsom salts, so just be aware that you may have slightly more loose stools afterwards. Magnesium glycinate can be slightly better tolerated, it's slightly more slowly absorbed, but you can check that out. There's 3 or 4 different types of magnesium available. The dose that we recommend is 400 milligrams a day. It's quite a big tablet. It's quite if you try and take a mixture of different medicines, you end up swallowing loads of pills, which are really difficult to swallow. The magnesium tablets are really big in particular. So what I suggest to my patients, if you can afford it, is to try Dolovent, Dolovent. that's 2 tablets twice a day. It's a food supplement, so you can't get it prescribed by a GP. Last time I looked, it was something like £40 a month. Some of my patients decide not to take 2 tablets twice a day, but 2 tablets a day, so it stretches it out to £20 something a month. It's got coenzyme Q10, riboflavin, which is B2, magnesium, and a whole bunch of other things like vitamin D, which help migraine, and it helps some migraineurs. It's definitely worth thinking about, but just be warned, it does make your urine go bright yellow.
Super. Question from Naomi. Question: how to prevent and cope with migraines during the ovulation and before periods without hormones? Answers, please.
So I used to have this. My dizziness used to get a lot worse around my menstrual period. But I don't get any symptoms around that time anymore. So first off, conditioned responses, as I said before, are crazy powerful. So if you expect your symptoms are going to be worse around that time, then they will be. Obviously, the hormonal changes are an extra stress on your nervous system. So bearing that in mind, it's an extra item in the stress bucket. So if you've got a bucket with a limited stress capacity in there, then hormone changes are going to be an extra stress and make it more likely to overflow, and then more likely to get a pile of symptoms. If you can empty out other stuff from your stress bucket, it makes it less likely for it to overflow with other stresses. And that includes all other stresses. Emotional processing really is key to emptying it out. And then, like, now hunger is no longer a stress to me. I can do intermittent fasting with no dizziness. I can, with none of my periods, I don't get dizzy. With perimenopause, I'm not getting dizzy. So just empty out your stress bucket and it will stop being a problem, combined with messages of safety and telling your brain that it doesn't need to do this. Also, Marissa P has got a lovely video about premenstrual symptoms where she's saying that people's period symptoms, if they're adopted, are more like their adopted parents than their biological parents. So there really is an element of what you believe your brain will give you to this. And that doesn't mean you're making it up. Do not get me wrong. That absolutely does not mean that you're making it up. But it just is something to bear in mind, and just to tell your brain it doesn't need to do it and it's making.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So I'll give a more medical reply than that. Wonderful if you can do it without medicine. That's fantastic to hear that can be done. Two comments I'd make. Firstly, this type of symptom tends to come on in my ladies in their sort of 30s and 40s, and particularly gets worse as sort of the perimenopause approaches. That's a very common time for this to get quite distressing. But I always talk about the sunny uplands of postmenopausal bliss. So think of the future, it will go away. May or may not be helpful now. And the second thing is for that very small group of our patients who are really severely affected by perimenopausal migraine, and it is absolutely horrid from what I see. There are a small number of gynecologists who are particularly interested in this, who won't necessarily give you hormones because you don't want those tablets, and obviously we don't want to give the pill to those with migraine. But there is a small band of dizzy gynecologists who have a particular interest in hormonal manipulation. That's not giving hormones, but they can give other injections to regulate the hormonal cycle. And if you're very distressed by this, they may be people to seek out who can help you.
Super. I'm going to hand over back to Claire now to run through the questions. And again, all I say, Pan, we're possibly slightly catching up, but the quicker we can go, the better, as we're hitting the 2-hour mark now. Over to you, Claire, please.
Okay, another question for Peter. This one's from Jackie. With triple PD, why do symptoms come on so quickly and out of the blue? Is there any way to stop them or slow them down so that I can at least get home when it starts? The symptoms once started suddenly when I was halfway down some stairs.
Yeah, just reflecting on that's a good question, and if that's happening, it's really distressing for you. Triple PD less often comes on suddenly, so we just got to reflect again on: is the diagnosis right? Is there something else going on? But it can do. And it comes back to this concept of visual vestibular mismatch. So you'll find you're more symptomatic going downstairs, as you were describing here, than going upstairs. Because going upstairs, you have a visual fix on the stairs. Going downstairs, you're looking into infinity. So patients with this type of problem find it more difficult going down the stairs. It's not an easy answer to give you, but it's trying to avoid that visual trigger that causes that particular vestibular response. And essentially, you're going down, you've got information coming from your ears to your brain, information coming from your eyes to your brain. And if that information is in conflict, then suddenly you short circuit and you freeze. And so it's just trying to stop, gather yourself, maybe close your eyes momentarily while you balance to get yourself settled again. And look at the treatments, the vestibular physiotherapies, the CBTs, the medications to try and settle down the triple PD.
I would say because the threat response comes on suddenly, like the threat response is subconscious as well. So you do not need to be consciously aware of what suddenly brought on the threat. It could have been, I mean, the stairs were the same, the top half than the bottom half visually. So what were you thinking about when you're going down the stairs? What was at the bottom of the stairs to wait for you? But also, just the threat response can be turned on by absolutely anything, and it does not need to make logical sense.
Okay, another question from Jackie again for Peter. Is there anything being done nationally to give GPs more information about triple PD? With the best will in the world, many GP appointments are in vain. I feel I've wasted many years and lost so much confidence.
I mean, again, it's a huge problem, isn't it? If we go back to a really well-defined condition such as BPPV, the crystals in the inner ear, John Epley first described the Epley maneuver in 1981. So 45 years ago, only a small handful of GPs do it, and many GP practices have no one who can do it still. And dreadfully, what almost everyone who goes to their GP with positional dizziness is told, do the Braund exercises. And that's the very worst thing you can be told, because all you do is you go home, you've got bad BPPV, and you lie side to side, and you're very, very sick. And then you're phobic of going into those positions, and you don't want to do it. That's 45 years after an easy to diagnose and very easy to treat condition. So where are we with triple PD? Yikes, really difficult. And the problem is this. The problem is the symptoms are quite nebulous. So imagine yourself, again, do a mind experiment. You're a GP, you're my GP, and I'm coming in to see you. And you're rushed off your feet and you're half an hour behind. Doctor, I just don't feel right. I don't know, I'm forgetting everything. I'm tired all the time. I've got a foggy head. The GP is going, right, oh, come on, look, what's going on here? Have a tablet, move on. And they're not focusing on the underlying balance disorder. So this is the problem with triple PD, that you and I know it's a well-defined condition, and you and I know what the symptoms of this are, but there's so much overlap. So the visual sensitivity overlaps with migraine, the motion sensitivity might overlap with vestibulopathy, the fatigue might overlap with ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. Do you see, it's actually quite a difficult diagnosis to make. And so the key really is on trying to get some awareness and referral to those who have time to listen and diagnose and treat appropriately. And the problem for our poor old GPs is there's such a huge number of different diagnoses out there in every medical speciality. I could never have been a GP. I'm really good at what I do, but I know an awful lot about very little. And they have to know something about an awful lot. And I think it's really difficult for them. And, it's down to people like me and all the other experts on the panel here to try our best to educate GPs. And the way I educate is I lecture endlessly, both in the UK, around the world. I've mentioned I've just come back from Bahrain. I was in China before that. I was in Vietnam before that. I go everywhere lecturing on this to try and improve awareness. We write books on this. We've had an article to Daily Mail, all of these things, try and educate. I write long letters. My poor secretaries have no fingers left, but I write long letters for a reason, partly to try and educate GPs as to the condition. Although the problem now is I understand many of them don't read our clinic letters. They get looked at by staff, and if there's no action to take, they get filed. It's really, really difficult. It's a really, really important point, and I don't have an easy answer. Just one other point I'd make. We were working hard on this 20 years ago. I was in a government advisory group then, probably 20 years ago, yeah. And what we wanted to do was set up regional balance czars. So the idea was each region would have an expert, be it a GP or a clinician in a hospital, who would lead balanced medicine in that region to try and promote it. And we tried to produce local balance clinic. It didn't work. We tried and tried. So we're still looking for the right answer here. We have some ideas, and with Andrew. Andrew and I, how long ago was it, Andrew? 10 or 15 years ago, set up a company called Balance Artificial Intelligence Diagnostics. So we were really 10 years before our time. We worked with IBM. We worked with one of Andrew's great friends, who was one of the founders of the Semantic Web, so a massive, massive international name in science. And we tried to develop an AI model of balance diagnostics. Very, very exciting. We didn't get there because we know that only about 2% of startups work. But I've been busily texting Andrew during this session here. You may have seen me and Andrew looking down, and we're just about to arrange to have a drink in a week or so, because I have another cunning plan. And those of you who have seen me before at the London Road Clinic will know that my son, who's next door and itching to go shopping with me because he wants to get a Christmas present, he's looking to do a PhD in a project allied to this. And we actually have quite an exciting idea. So we're doing our best, but it's really, really difficult.
Really good answer. Also, I very much enjoy going for drinks and cunning plans if there's an extra invite going.
I'm sure there'll be a seat at the table.
Okay. Oh, weirdly, the next question is from Kevin. He's disappeared, so I'll just move on. This one's from Michaela. I'm trying to prepare for a busy family's Christmas time with children and grandchildren. What exercises can I do at home by myself to make me more steady on my feet? I have general imbalance and never have severe vertigo attacks. I understand that I will have to try things first to see if they help.
Now, on the vestibular rehab side of things, that takes quite a period of time. So vestibular exercises won't resolve unsteadiness in the 2-3 weeks we've got between now and Christmas. Probably what's going to be more helpful are things like breathing techniques and calming systems to help keep the stress levels under control, taking a considered approach to how you interact with people, the environment that you're in, and how much you're able to potentially control that. As I said before, about potentially standing so you've not got the whole of the room twinkling and tinsel and lots of things going on all at once, and limiting that a little bit more, pacing yourself, have a little bit of activity, that bit of socialization, and potentially then take yourself away somewhere a little bit quieter, or just sit in the armchair with a glass of something in your hand and close your eyes and let your eyes rest for a bit, and pacing yourself through rather than going for the full socialization for as long as you can manage and then feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated and upset.
Next question is from Angela. She can't attend the meeting today, and it's for Michaela and Pippa. I've been diagnosed with triple PD. After a gradual onset over several years, it's become more of a persistent problem in the last 2 years and is having a considerable impact on my life. I've seen vestibular therapists and done the exercises which have been helpful. I take nortriptyline to relieve the resulting anxiety, but it still continues to get worse. Is this what I have to expect, or is there something more I can be doing about it?
Do you want to lead on that, Pippa?
Yeah, I can do. So I would suggest trying the Steady Coach free course, as well as all the other things that we've discussed today, because it really has a comprehensive plan and way through of recovering fully from triple PD, and you can recover fully from triple PD with no medications. Also, you can watch past presentations on that as well.
I think it's with triple PD, it's about taking that multidisciplinary approach. It's not just a do one thing and that's going to resolve everything for you. It's tackling all those different threads that are involved in the difficulties that you're having. You're on mute, Claire. Sorry.
I don't know how I managed that. From Richard for Peter. If a person has several vestibular disorders for approximately 8 years and they're not getting better over time, what are the options available?
Okay, again, another really good question. The first thing is it's very common to have several different vestibular disorders at any one time. So in most of medicine, we'll have a range of symptoms that cause one disorder. So central abdominal pain, fever, then radiating to a groin, that might be appendicitis. In balanced medicine, you often just have one symptom, that's dizziness, but you have a number of causes of it. So the one I use most commonly is Meniere's disease, which is really 5 conditions in one. So you have Meniere's, 40% of Meniere's patients have migraine, 20% have BPPV, all have a degree of vestibulopathy, and all have an emotional response. So the first thing is you need to get each of those subtypes, subsets of diagnosis actually confirmed and properly diagnosed. So the answer to your question is really see a specialist who has the ability to diagnose each of those subtypes. It may mean that you require some testing. It may mean you need to see someone with particular expertise. And the second thing is don't give up. Now, we will never, as experts, claim we can get everyone better. We can't. But we get the great majority of people better or better enough. And even if you've had symptoms for many years, you've had symptoms for 8 years, I mean, every month I'll see someone with symptoms for 30 years, I can get better. And it's not uncommon to see people with symptoms for 40 years. We did a TV documentary on a lady from Oakham, and it must have been a decade ago we did it. And she was 76. Her symptoms had begun at the age of 16 when she became very sensitive to motion, couldn't look at water. And I remember her telling me her boyfriend lived on a houseboat at that time. And so he was binned very quickly because she couldn't look at the water coming to see him. And then as she got older, she got worse and worse. And by 76, she came to see us. And we actually filmed a documentary on her, and we had her better in 4 months. It was absolutely amazing. It was really, we almost selected her at random from my patients. So don't give up, see an expert, and there really is a good prospect of still getting better.
Another question from Richard, this time for Michaela. How can you learn to live independently with chronic vestibular migraine and triple PD?
So I think the important thing is to treat the migraine, and if vestibular rehab is suitable, following that, doing that on a regular basis, keeping as active and as mobile as you can is really, really important. It's very, very tempting to avoid all the things that make you feel worse. It's a perfectly natural response. It's a survival instinct, but with balance, it's one of the worst things that you can do. So it is really important to try and keep active and do things you enjoy doing, even if it's just gradually building yourself up, and just starting nice and gently and pacing yourself in doing so. Things like Tai Chi can be really helpful with movement and with mental health, for balance. So for doing it independently, it's just having that confidence of being able to say, okay, even if it doesn't feel that nice, as long as I'm doing things safely, I can still continue to do some of these things that I enjoy doing.
So question sort of continues on to the next one because it's still from Richard. So how can you set up an exercise program for people with chronic migraine, vestibular migraine and or triple PD? What sort of exercises are best? Well, you've mentioned the Tai Chi. Is weight training okay?
Yeah, so vestibular rehab, it's really important to get it customized to you, to the specific difficulties you're having each step of the way, and things will change as you progress through your journey with your balance. So there's not a nice, simple, straightforward, you do exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this order, in this timing. It's got to be a customized thing alongside the support that you're given through that process. With migraine, again, it's looking at lifestyle, whether you're having a lot of caffeine, potentially your stress levels. The exercise is really important for migraine, keeping hydrated. So tackling all of those different bits is going to be the key to improving with those. But it's not a nice, simple, everything is a standardized thing that everybody can follow exactly the same thing and get the same results.
Weight training, just to add, is really, really good for proprioception. And so it's really, really helpful for balance disorders, and particularly for the bilateral vestibular hyperfunction, because it strengthens the proprioceptive system. So then they've got more inputs to the brain about where the body is in space. Yoni Arthur from the Study Coach has actually put together, in combination with someone else who I can't remember their name, there are 2 or 3 online videos on YouTube for strength training with people with chronic dizziness. So it might be worth looking up. If you look up the Study Coach on weight training, then there are videos on specifically, because she's a strength coach as well, what exercises are good to do and building up and doing it with dizziness. So that can be really helpful.
Next question is from Angela to the whole panel. Is triple PD a dysautonomic disorder, i.e. due to a problem with the autonomic nervous system? Peter, do you want to start?
No, it's a central brain processing disorder of balance. So it's a visual vestibular mismatch, eye-ear sensory mismatch. Doesn't mean you can't have a dysautonomia with it, but no, it is not related to that directly.
Anything to add? I think that's just a no there. Okay, last question. I'm going to come back to Kevin's side question later. This one's from Jenny. Should I try to get another appointment with a consultant? I've been diagnosed with triple PD a year after my attack, and I've had a couple of follow-up chats on the phone, but nothing more. Should I be looking for more help? Do they think there are meds that work for this condition?
Was that for me?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah. I mean, absolutely, you need to get another face-to-face appointment. I think that I think Zoom consultations can be incredibly powerful. This type of communication here. I'm much less sure about telephone consultations. They can help occasionally, but face-to-face, if you've got a chronic balance disorder, is so much more powerful to make sure nothing else is going on. You know, you haven't developed BPPV or other conditions. I think that's really important. And then, does medicine help? Absolutely, it does. There's 3 principal legs to treating triple PD: the psychological elements of it, the vestibular physiotherapy elements, and the medications. And there are good trials on medications. We tend to use SNRI antidepressants, so venlafaxine is the poster child. Not an easy medicine to use, and we'd have to talk about that in great detail before we used it, and it's only for certain people I would use that. And the SRI antidepressants, citalopram, sertraline, can also be really helpful, but again, there are potential issues with those. So this is something you definitely need to see a consultant about, and a consultant who knows what they're talking about, and talk through the options with them. So I really hope you find the right person there. And we also have to be realistic with triple PD. We don't get everyone better. You can read different articles on the overall success rate, but probably about 8 out of 10 people get very significantly better or fully better after treatment.
Can I just add to that, there are a lot of recovery stories. There are over 50 recovery stories for chronic dizziness on the Study Coach YouTube channel to help with hope.
Thank you. Now I want to go back to Kevin's side question now that he's reappeared. What's the best advice for a patient where their GP appears ill-equipped or uninterested in their problems? Should they insist on a referral to ENT, be given a YouTube link to these Life on a Level meetings, and then revisit them a week later, or any other suggestions? Like, I've massively invested in this question.
Well, shall I take the lead on that one just to start with? Yeah, I mean, all the above. Tick, tick, tick. Yeah, I mean, share your experience with other patients, like we're doing here. That's why we're all here on a Saturday, to know you're not alone. If you're able to do any internet searching, that's a great thing to do, to try and find who your local expert is, and try and find someone who really does know and understand about these conditions, and really try and insist you get to see them. And if you're getting absolutely nowhere on the NHS, and unfortunately there are some regions of the UK where there is no access to balance medicine. In fact, I gave a lecture to the Royal Society of Medicine on this a few years ago. It's absolutely heartbreaking that there are some regions that still do not have access to balance expertise. You may just need to try and go and see someone privately to establish a diagnosis and be guided. It may not be the right thing to do, but it may be the only thing some people can do.
Anyone else? Because I think it links back to Jackie's question from before about is there anything being done to provide GPs with this information? And I don't know how we could go about that, but I think it's absolutely what we need. If there's some sort of package we could go and go, right, somebody's come to you, just have a look at this or get them to look at that. And then, just give them the information. I don't know how we start doing that, though.
No. I mean, I think it's a very, very important point you've hit on here. I had one of the joys of my role is that people come to me from around the world, other doctors with lots of ideas. So I had a doctor from Greece, who I know very well, emailed me last week, and he's got lots of colleagues working in AI. And although getting really complex artificial intelligence led treatments and diagnostics is actually much more difficult than it sounds. It sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it? But it's actually more difficult than you can imagine. Getting an AI triage tool that is working out who goes where is, I think, relatively straightforward. And we do have some concepts of that. And what I really would like to do, and this is one of the things we're working on, is getting an AI triage tool that we can introduce into general practice. So you put your range of symptoms in, and should you been seen by an ENT doctor, a cardiologist, a neurologist, a psychologist, that I don't think is that difficult. So I think probably that's going to be the most effective way that we can take this forward.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right, back to you, Kevin, I think.
Super. Did we do Jenny's question? Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Oh, we've done that one. Apologies.
Yes, you missed it.
I've got, we've missed it. Yeah, we need to do.
No, you missed it.
I missed it. Sorry. Apologies.
I think you nodded off, Kevin.
Yes, I did. It's the longest meeting we've done so far. I've got one question to insert. It came in late yesterday from Geraldine. For Peter, I've been prescribed tamoxifen for breast cancer treatment and wondered if there could be an interaction between it and the microdose
venlafaxine.
Vaccine, yeah, approximate. I'm taking no. The answer's no.
So I don't know is the answer. I mean, venlafaxine is an SNRI we use for triple PD and anxiety and balance disorders. Tamoxifen, of course, is for breast cancer. I'm sorry to hear that you're having to take that. I don't know the interaction myself. I would have to look that up.
Okay, super. We are now at the last three questions for the panel. But before we go there, Andrew, I believe you've got to shoot off for another.
Sorry, yes.
No, look, thank you so much for being here, Andrew. Apologies, we've overrun so far by 22 minutes. We're sure to see more of Andrew next year. And thanks for everything you do for the community. It's so good of you to put all you know into our realm and help us with your knowledge. So thanks ever so much, Andrew, and we'll have a lovely Christmas, and we will see you.
And you.
You
I took my hat off.
Yes. We'll see you in 2026. Thank you very much.
Cheerio. Bye,
Cheers.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Andrew.
Now, for the panelists remaining, 3 questions for the new year. I always like this bit. I'm waiting one day for an answer of what's going to happen next year with the answer we can clone Professor Rea. That would be very, very useful. If we were promised so much with the sheep 20, 30 years ago, it seems now, and nothing's come of it. But never mind. Questions for the panel, and if each of you can answer this. For the new year, what good news can the balance disorder community look forward to in 2026 in terms of better treatment, greater understanding by the medical community, or anything that will let us all hope for a happier new year? Could I start with Pippa, please?
So in terms of hope, I would suggest that anybody who's got triple PD, MDDS, vestibular migraine, or medically unexplained chronic dizziness, have a look at the recovery story interviews on the Study Coach. And like I said, there are over 50 of them, and they can give hope of recovery.
Lovely. Michaela?
Struggling with my mute there. I think that the thing to give real hope, I think, is seeing such a great increase over the years and ongoing in the numbers of us that specialise in diagnosing and treating imbalance. We are getting there to hopefully eventually meet enough demand. There are a lot more of us, and we are getting more and more specialist knowledge through to a greater number of people over a wider area. And there is a lot more support now than there ever used to be, and it will continue to grow.
Super. And Peter, please.
Two quick answers. One is technology. And for example, as I mentioned with my son, we're looking at developing, it's really, really exciting tool. I'm not allowed to say anything about it because of patency, but it would be a treatment that you can use at home rather than having to come in and see the doctor. It's very exciting. It's going to take us a couple of years or so to develop, but we're working on that. And the second is a real world piece of good news. So for a number of years, anyone who's visited me in the NHS, and only local patients are allowed to see us in the NHS, we have a 1 year wait for a new appointment. It's absolutely diabolical, to be honest. And you come and see me in what's effectively a crumbly porter cabin. It's pretty miserable at the infirmary. We've been working incredibly hard to get money, and to extract any money out of the government is nigh on impossible. But last week, after multiple years of trying, we have been awarded something like £50 million at the infirmary. Now, I'm not getting all of it, I have to say. However, it's going to knock down the balance centre. Those of you who are in Leicester, all the Knighton Street offices are going to be knocked down. And we're going to have a brand new entrance to the infirmary, hopefully with an M&S and all the rest of it, to make it a proper hospital. It's like a labyrinth at the moment. I think the infirmary is the most depressing of hospitals imaginable. And so it'll be a really positive place to go. And we have already built a new balance centre, which is over at the Leicester General Hospital. And anyone who's been to the surgical hub or endoscopy hub over at the General Hospital, the first floor is our balance clinic. My room has lots of lovely glass windows looking over trees. We have a research unit there. We've got everything. The only thing we don't have is anything in the rooms. They're completely empty. So at the end of next year, when the big swing ball comes in to knock down our balance centre at the infirmary, we have got the money now to relocate to our new state-of-the-art facilities at the General Hospital. And because of that, I'm going to carry on working for a few years. So there you are.
Very good news. Very good news, Peter. Thanks. The next question for the year ahead. If you had the powers of the Christmas fairy and could bestow one thing, just one thing, an improvement, a new process, a change to our wonderful NHS, what would it be? Michaela, start with yourself.
I think you've probably made a very good point of the education for the GPs to have the confidence and the knowledge to identify a vestibular issue and to very promptly refer on to an appropriate place.
Super. Pippa?
Claire's presentation says it all, right? If we need that fixed, we need people not to be waiting 5 years just to get a diagnosis. It's horrific. So, yeah, just fix all the stuff on Claire's presentation.
And Peter?
Well, this is going to be a very political answer, and I'll probably get sacked for it. But the problem with the NHS is top-down management. We're managed from central government, and the central government have their own agenda. I think, from my perspective, if I was able to manage the unit from in a devolved way as a clinician, I can see what's needed. I can see how we can get better, but I don't feel as a clinician I'm being allowed to do that. There you are. Yeah. I've just got sacked.
No.
Can I do one, even though I wasn't on the panel?
Yes, go ahead.
They need to change the way that you can qualify to do this. Like, I can't get funded to do the training. Like, they finally agreed. So we've got like 3 people in our department that can do balance assessments. And they sort of half trained me. Then they're going to send me on the master's course. But even then, I have to go and do the higher training scheme or something before they let me do anything. And it's, there must be people out there in a similar position that want to come and be qualified to help all of you guys. But there's no way for us to do it unless we win the lottery and pay for it ourselves. But that'd be my wish. They train us better and more focused.
Yeah. No, there's lots to do. Lots to do. The final question for the panel. Based upon your own experiences, observations, opinions regarding balance disorders, what would you suggest that our members consider as a helpful New Year's resolution they may consider for themselves for the new year? Peter.
I suppose two I would think about. One is make sure you're absolutely sure you've got the right diagnosis and that you've been properly treated. And if you haven't, seek that diagnosis. And the second is find an activity. An activity is the important thing that you enjoy and you can do repeatedly. And it may be with family and friends if you're able to go walking. So I recommend locally people go down to Rutland Water, have a little walk around Rutland with family and friends who are distracting you. Really good visual stimuli, really good relaxation. And I think it's really important that whatever treatment and exercises you do are not a miserable chore, but they're enjoyable, and try and find whatever it is suits you.
Super. Pippa?
So feel your emotions, tune in with your body. How am I feeling? And self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. What's the kindest thing that I can do for myself in this moment? So if I'm not doing something, it's driven by self-compassion rather than fear.
Super. Michaela?
So I'm going to go for two as well. The biggest one, I think, is move. The main ones that I often recommend to people: go for a walk, even if it's down to the bottom of your garden and back again, on a daily basis, not as and when I feel like it, but on a daily basis. Make sure you go out for a walk. Potentially Tai Chi. Again, it's something very gentle, very repetitive. It does a lot of good for you, muscles, mental health, balance. And the second one to it is pace yourself. We've built a life that is too fast for us as a society. Everything's just go, 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 go. There's lots of stimulation all the time, and we're not built for it. The human body isn't built for that level of constant stimulation and activity. Pacing yourself, taking that time to rest, to socialize with family, friends, and have that nice interaction, as well as the activity levels, is really important.
Super. Now, before the panel go, I'm just going to wrap up the meeting with a couple of reminders. There's a new appeal which you'll get in the email. A government-sponsored, paid-for series of commercials are going to be made next year to promote CDCs, Community Diagnostic Centres. We've been contacted by a company involved in producing these. If any of our members have gone via a CDC with to get their diagnosis of balance disorders, you'll get more of this in the email, but contact myself and you could be appearing in a commercial next year. For everyone, especially for Christmas, it's about being with family, with friends. Don't forget our member-to-member network. It's the best thing you can ever do with this group is opt in. You can get to email, WhatsApp, text, even call fellow members and start making brilliant friendships. There are the WhatsApp groups. All this will be coming through to you by email. Don't forget Susanna, who you've met today. She needs your help, your participation. So you can volunteer for that. And we'll be back February the 7th. We'll try and keep it to a 2-hour meeting then. But what a brilliant meeting today. What fabulous questions and what great answers from our panel that I stress have given up their Saturday afternoon for us. So I think a massive round of applause for the panel. Thank you very much for what you've done and all the brilliant answers that we've got now and recorded for posterity. Peter, I might edit out the political answer so you can retain your job for another few years. But I'll talk to you about that later. But thanks ever so much for everything. everyone who's taken part today, all of the members. Couldn't do it without you. Or your participation is brilliant. How you stepped up to Claire Thorpe's survey was excellent. So have a brilliant Christmas. Remember what you've heard today, all that great advice. Make it the best Christmas you can have. And we'll see you all in the new year. But thanks ever so much, panel, Claire, Suzanne, everyone. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye all. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
From my friends as well. Bye-bye all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Kevin. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Merry Christmas.